Good morning and welcome to Unlocking Freedom in Nature and Art. And greetings to all of those from all over the world. And today, welcome, Lori. I'm so excited to see you.
Happy to see you too, Tammy. How are you?
I'm good. And we want to welcome Noah and Haroldson. Is that correct, Noah?
Yes, ma'am. Noah Haroldson.
Noah Haroldson he's a guest. It's my contact. He's here in Texas where I'm at in the US. And we started talking and all his background and everything he does just fascinated me. And I said, hey, I think do you realize this is an interview I'm making to see if you're a good candidate for our podcast? Then I said, let's check it out. Let's get this going. And yes, he qualified to come here to be with us. He does martial arts. He is writing a book. He has an amazing story. So we are happy to have you.
Lori, like you said, I have so many friends who have incredible stories, and I'm always trying to get them on. A lot of times as people, we don't realize that we have some incredible stories that behind us that got us to where we are, especially some of the strongest and bravest people that you know. So I am so excited, Noah, to hear your story. And we're going to start with the first question I always ask.
Sure.
Where did you grow up and where are you from?
Where am I from? Okay. Well, I was born in Jefferson County, Kentucky. So Louisville, Kentucky is where I was born there in 1981. When I was a baby, my family moved to Dayton, Ohio. And that's basically where I grew up. I was born in Kentucky, grew up in Dayton, Ohio.
Did you graduate school there? Or,
yes, yes. That was K through 12, and then shortly after I graduated from high school in Ohio, I was a Mormon missionary in Oakland, California. And so that was from 01 to 03. And immediately after that, I went to college at BYU and then to law school at the University of Kentucky.
Wow. Okay. So from serving and ministering, you just decided when did you discover you wanted to go into law?
I didn't.
Oh, what happened?
Well, when I was a Mormon missionary, I met many chiropractors. And every chiropractor I met, I had some chronic pain that they helped me with. And every chiropractor I met had a giant house and only worked 3 days a week. And I thought, oh, I could be a chiropractor. Then one day I woke up. One night on my mission, I remember I was staying in Pittsburgh, California. And I had a dream. And I woke up from that dream knowing that God wanted me to go to law school. He wanted me to go to BYU first and then go to law school, which was challenging because I didn't have the grades to get into BYU.
Yeah. So just first of all, your motivation was maybe money and status, right? Being motivated with chiropractors. Right. And Ika is saying, yay for chiropractors, but Ika, he's not a chiropractor. He ended up being an attorney. And then I love that you said, you mentioned a dream, because if you want to watch last week's episode, we had Bambi, our guest, talked all about dream interpretation and dream incubation. So that's pretty fascinating.
I will definitely check that. I'm fascinated by dreams.
And then
it was a great conversation last week.
And the fact that you just followed suit, I mean, why it was so important for you to follow that, or how vivid or livid was your dream? And then what was the message there that compelled you to pursue that?
Well, the interesting thing is I don't even remember the dream. I don't remember anything about it. I just woke up one morning knowing that God wanted me to go to BYU and then go to law school. Okay. And that's how, at the time, that's how I knew it was from God, because I'd never had those thoughts before. And I had no desire to do those things.
And what was the undergrad? What did you get into because of the grades and all that? But did you finally get into it?
Yeah, I had less than a 3.0 GPA in high school, and so I remember at the time I had this dream, and I went to my missionary leader, got permission. Well, I filled out I was filling out the college applications with pencil back then, because that's how you did it. In the booklet, it showed all of the statistics for acceptance. And so the average accepted GPA was like 3.9, and mine was below 3. So, and it required an ACT score, which I didn't have and that's a long story why I never took the ACT, but I got permission from my mission president to go take the ACT. I took it 2 weeks later and then used that score and got into BYU via miracle. There's no other explanation.
So God really wanted this for you, that he worked out for you
Yes.
to get in. So then are you still practicing law?
Yes, ma'am. Yes. And so that's I practice. I call it one of my side hustles. I'm an entrepreneur. I own a few businesses, one of which is my law practice.
So, and what kind of law do you practice?
Just transactions. I do business and transactions. I don't do anything that involves, personality wise, I don't like conflict. So conflict stresses me out. So I don't do any litigation, no family, no criminal. I just help businessmen do business. I help people get along.
Okay. That
I can
the
see
opposite.
that.
The opposite of dealing
right.
with conflict is just trying to be a peacemaker, or yeah.
Right.
So what's been your biggest takeaway on your career as a lawyer or doing what you do? And Tammy mentioned early on when we were backstage and not live yet, she mentioned a word that I really like. It's big part of my value system is integrity. What can you say what's happening out there nowadays in the business world?
Well, what I'm seeing lots of changes. I've noticed a lot of changes that technology has made, and I've interacted with lots of different people in lots of different industries. And so I see myself as an attorney, as a professional communicator. And so I see what my job is to help two people who are trying to enter into a transaction. They negotiate, they bargain, they communicate the best they can, and even though they want different things. And so my role is often, even though I'm hired by one party, is to facilitate the bargain so that both parties get what they bargained for. So that way nobody fights. And so this is important to me because this goes back to my childhood. I have 8 brothers and sisters, and we were poor, and there was a lot of chaos in my house. And so, which, stressful for me, which is why I learned how to avoid conflict by mediating and communicating. And this is a skill, this is a survival skill that I picked up as a child. And this is broadly applicable. I mean, I have 4 daughters, and most of what I do as a parent is conflict resolution and helping my daughters communicate with their mother and with each other.
I
And
love
I think
that.
people don't realize how much communication is the number one thing that causes so many problems. And
Absolutely.
I think it's so important. And a lot of people, businesses, forget that if they put stuff in writing and it's put the right way and both people agree on it and they sign it, then there's not the conflict later in life. You can't say, oh, but I thought you said this or I thought you said that. So, I mean, and then I can see how it helps, of course, in family situations as well. But I'm going to tell all entrepreneurs and businesses out there, if you have a partners or even family, especially if you go in with family, write it down, or tape record it or something so that you are in agreement, because somebody might change or they might marry somebody different, that has different values. And just so you don't have conflict later in the future, it is best to come into agreement and hire somebody like Noah.
So I have all kinds of comments here, Noah. People are watching. I want to say hello to Aika. I want to say hello to Heather and Sandra and Christopher. And I don't know what number you are, Noah, of the 8 kids. I don't know if you know I have 8 kids.
There's 9 children. I'm number 6 of 9.
Number 6 of the 9. That's so cool. God bless you. You're kind of like not a middle child, but more or less. And
I'm the oldest of the second batch. Let's say that.
Got it. I totally see it, that working that way. And I guys saying, I bet Lori Beard can relate to being a conflict negotiator. That is so true. And that's what I'm pursuing right now. When I am in my business of the parents and teenagers, I'm all about communication and to get along and strengthen those bonds. I want to ask you, Noah, what is a good way or a good technique or skill to have when you are as an attorney or as just interactions and with your daughters? What is it that is just the deal maker when it comes to communicating and bringing up peace and justice for all?
Mm-hmm. Well, in my experience, it's a good question, by the way. This is super practical. In my experience, the best way to facilitate communication is to ensure that the other person is being heard and that they feel and notice that they're being heard. Yeah. And the best way that I've found to do this is if we're in an adversarial position or an adversarial posture, or for instance, if we're negotiating a deal when we want different things, the best way I can communicate with the other person is to make sure that they know that I understand what they're saying. And so if they have a question or a concern or a comment, I can repeat that back to them. And if we're actually debating or arguing, there's a technique called steel manning. Do you know have you heard of that before? Steel manning, as opposed to a straw man? Mm-hmm. Straw man is when you basically argue against something that they're not saying. Steel manning is when I am able to repeat their thoughts back to them in a manner that they agree with. And so if I have an opponent or opposing counsel that says, I want this thing for these reasons, the best way I can communicate with him is to make sure I understand the thing that he wants, and I'm able to repeat that back to him along with his reasoning. And then after I do that, ask for his approval and say, do I understand what you're saying? And always, and I always make it a point to try to check in with people throughout the conversation. But to answer your question, it's making sure that the other person is heard and notices and feels that they're heard.
Listening skills.
Yeah, the jargon, I know it's active listening and reflective listening. Is just trying to paraphrase and for validation, even when the other person doesn't agree. And then and then also a good question that I always emphasize for people to ask is, did I get that right? After reflective listening, did I get that right? And then the person just clarifies if I got it right or not, and then we can move forward. But it's lacking. Do you feel that skill is lacking nowadays?
Yes.
And how do you see it? How do you notice it?
Well, for one thing, people have a hard time listening. Often when our need to speak and be heard is too strong, we stop listening. And so it's easier to be a good listener by not subverting or suppressing our own desires, but to be patient with them and to have confidence that I'll have an opportunity to speak and share what I have to say, and trusting that the other person will provide that opportunity to me. And so real communication requires a little bit of faith in the other person to listen to you. And so giving them the opportunity to do that, and my practical experience, and I don't know how this is for everyone, but in my experience, the best way for me to be able to do that is to make sure I'm breathing and listening, instead of and to quiet the chatter and to avoid trying to think of the next thing I'm going to say, and trying to avoid thinking of a response before I'm absolutely sure I know the other person's what the other person's trying to say. And so this is a very deep dynamic, and I think this is it's a characteristic of most relationship problems. And I don't want to speak over broadly here, but this is something that men tend to do. is to leap in to try to fix the problem before they understand what the problem is. And this is all played out in the Garden of Eden conversation that we all know, where we have a back and forth between Adam and Eve, and Adam thinks the problem is one thing, but it's not that thing. The problem is something completely different, and he has to stop and listen before the two can actually communicate.
I think you're so right. You're so right. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say it's so on, and I agree with what Ike just had put on. Was it's called respect also.
Yes. Yeah. Well, it's humility, and so men really want to help you with your problems, and so that goes along with that divine masculine, hyper focused, driven energy. Is you have a problem, I'll solve it. And so, but the problem with that is that, again, this is generally speaking, women know what the problem is. They know that there's a problem before they can actually say it and name it. And so if there's a problem in a relationship, there's often one person has better language to express that problem than the other. And it could be either the man or the woman, but usually one person is better at speaking and articulating what the problem is. And so real communication and those dynamics is that person that knows how to speak the best has to listen the most.
Go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead.
No, the person what? Finish your thought. I'm sorry.
The person who is better at speaking has to listen more and has to shut up. And so that could look different depending on the relationship dynamic. But for me personally, and this is something that I did a lot in my marriage, was my ex-wife would say, okay, well, we have a problem. There's a problem. We need to have a conversation. We've all had that dread, guys know this. We need to talk. Oh, okay. That means there's a problem. I need to talk means there's a problem. So getting in and using language to go find out what that problem is, to solve it and to get rid of it. If we focus too much on that, we don't listen.
What would be a better approach instead of I need to talk to you, just for the other person not to start getting nervous? Like, what is a better approach to that, or to have an agreement ahead of time saying, hey, listen, when I say we need to talk, it doesn't mean that there's a problem. It means that we want to consult. We want to bring something up to the table, or what is a better way to approach that?
Well, what you just did was perfect. Was, if for example, let's say I get a certain feeling. I get a little bit of anxiety when the person I'm in a relationship says, I have a problem, we need to talk. My mind it can go all sorts of different places. And so what you just said, like, okay, well, we need to talk, but this is what we need to speak about. This is how I would like to speak about. I don't want you to feel anxious or nervous, but you can just be frank and open. And even if you don't even know what the problem is, just say that. Say what's true. And this is the underlying axiom of all talk therapy, is that if we're able to share and speak our mind and say the truth, that will be redemptive no matter what we're trying to do. So if you're nervous, say you're nervous. If you're anxious, say you're anxious.
Yeah.
If you don't want me to think something, if you don't want to be mistaken, say that. Now that's different than trying to control me and trying to make sure that I'm not mistaken. But if those are your thoughts and feelings, being able to articulate them is a skill, and that takes time and practice, and it's a lot of work. And so, until when you're with someone for so long, these are the kinds of relationship dynamics that you need to work out at the beginning. That's all. Ideally, that's what courtship is for. Learning our communication patterns. What makes you nervous? What triggers you? What kind, how do you communicate when you're upset? How do you communicate when you're stressed out from your parents? How do you communicate when you're stressed out from work? How do you communicate when you're fearful of the future? All of these things take time to establish. But the best way to do that is just simply rely on the truth. And even if you're not sure that, and so often we get in the way of judging the way that we think and judging the way that we feel. But that gets in the way of the truth. And the truth is, if I feel anxiety, I don't want to spend precious time and energy judging about whether or not I should be anxious or whether I ought to be.
Right.
But
or dreading that interaction.
Right. And so this is where Brene Brown's work comes into play. Is you have to be extremely radically vulnerable in order to have the highest level of communication.
So what's interesting, Noah, is I took a listening class our church put on for all of the teachers and people that were helping out, sponsors
Really?
and stuff. And it was probably like 3 hours long, but it was probably one of the best classes I've ever taken. And I could actually see you leading something like that.
Wow.
So
what did you learn in this class?
What
did you learn in this class? What was your greatest takeaway?
They had some different practice exercises on listening, a lot of what you're talking about. Because so many times, like you said, we interrupt because and I'm bad at it sometimes, because you have that squirrel moment. I call it the squirrel moment. It's like, oh, it triggers something that I feel could help this person, and if we're not listening, it may not help that person at all. We need to, and I can't remember all the little details right now, but it was such an interesting course or class because it helps you to appreciate, helps you to listen more. And I know from doing all the stuff I've done in life, you have to, when you were talking about, you have to listen and repeat back what you just heard so that they feel like you did listen to them.
Yes.
And it doesn't matter what age, if you're dealing with mental patients, if you're dealing with gang members, for a child.
It's the best way to connect with someone and to love them is to listen to them.
So no, I was just going to say, I've been happily and joyfully married for this December will be 31 years. And thank you. And it's been a lot of work and it's been frustrating sometimes. And it hasn't been super joyful at some points in our lives. And it's not until we have each learned how is it that we perceive things, because even perception, you can assume and the other person also assuming, which I call, hey, you're not a mind reader. Don't think that's my intention. And establishing those intentions. And instead of having that tug of war of being two different teams, I once, I love metaphors. And I said, I don't want to put the boxing gloves on. I don't want to get into the boxing ring. Let's just think we are wearing the same jersey. We are on the same team. But what I wanted to say a few minutes ago is highlighting the importance of understanding each other and understanding each other's messaging and need. And an example, if I may say so, is people a lot think about compromise. Compromise is the solution, and it might be sometimes, but in this example, there's two sisters. They need orange. They need an orange. And there was just the one orange left over in the house. And as it turned out, they said, okay, let's split it in half. That's how you compromise, right? But at the end, that was not the solution because one needed the juice and the other one needed the peel of the orange. So what can you say about that? What's the lesson there?
This is that's a very good question. It's actually you're hitting on a very subtle distinction here. And that there's a very subtle distinction between compromise and negotiation. So, compromise is a very simplistic solution to a complex problem. But if each of those sisters were to sit down and to communicate with each other, you would like an orange. I would like an orange. Well, talk to me about that. Why do you want an orange? Can we, so what is your branch? Are you going to eat it? Are you thirsty? Do you need the skin? You need the zest for a recipe? What do you need? And so this is where listening and communicating really matters, because compromise doesn't give everyone what they want.
Yeah.
In fact, I've heard I heard this in law school all the time. It's like, You know, we would talk to mediators and people who do arbitration and say, I know I've done my job when both parties are upset and not happy that they didn't get what they want. And I don't like that approach, you know, because it's sort of like a negative view of negotiation, because every relationship we have is negotiated. In terms of power dynamic. You can think of it that way, although that's probably not the best way to think about it. But in every single relationship we have, we are either a master, or we're either a dominator, we're dominated, or we're a negotiator. And that goes for every relationship. You know, it's just a matter of degree. And so if we really want to communicate with someone, we have to listen and address their needs as well. Right. Otherwise, like, both parties walk away unhappy.
Right. Like that. Tell me more. Tell me more. I want to understand. Tell me more for clarity. It's just a beautiful statement. It's music to my ears, or I want to offer that song, right? When somebody's talking from teenagers to my husband. So I want to say, tell me more. I want to understand. Tell me more. I want to learn more. So Sandra Crook has a great question here, and Aika is supporting this question. That's why I'm super intrigued, Noah. What if someone is giving you a 30-minute monologue of what they are saying, and you cannot even remember how to respond? And although I agree with not focusing on your response. Thank you.
So if you have a hard time listening, that's what it sounds like?
I'm not sure if it's listening or interjecting.
I think what she's talking about here is the fact some people will go on a ramble. You know, your tones is very important, but they'll go on a ramble where they won't even give you a chance to insert anything for 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. They're telling you what they feel and how you should feel and how you should respond. They're not listening to you at all, and they don't care really about your feelings. And so I think that's what she's saying.
Okay, we've all been around these people, the people that and often it's due, you know, this is in my experience, is people that, you know, that are, sometimes it's insecurity with silence. Some people really are uncomfortable with nobody saying anything. Some people, but often in my experience, is that when you have people that need to say things, it's because they're not ever being listened to by anybody. And I think this is this is something that the population in general suffers from, which is nobody listens to us. We have very few people that actually listen to what we actually have to say and to care about. And so to answer your question, you know, what happens when I have someone who's not interested in what I have to say, is not interested in listening to me, but for some reason they insist on being heard and listened to.
So one of the examples I've had is when I've called somebody out on something. That they take it, you know, even though you're trying to verify, like you said, what they've done, but when you call them on something that doesn't have integrity or something, a lot of times you find that they spring back.
Oh, okay.
Does that make sense?
So when you say calling someone out, do you just mean disagreeing with someone?
Yes, on their move. You know,
pointing something out, like
pointing something out. Like, you know, this person, and it's not their normal, but you see them doing this, and it's hurting them, and it's hurting others.
Oh, okay.
Kind of. You know, and you're like, hey, did you realize that you're doing this? You know,
are you talking about, like, you see someone that's making a mistake and you want to help them and you want to give them advice by telling them they're doing something wrong with their life or something?
No, it's like you see them, because I don't want to. Basically, you're watching them do stuff, how they're interacting with somebody. Say it's a friend,
okay.
And they think they're in the right. But you see the other point, because you're kind of the middle person, which you are, and you point it out to that person that, hey, maybe you're being controlling. Maybe you need to change your voice or your tone or how you handle stuff. That person flies off the handle thinking you're attacking them instead of realizing that you're helping them.
I see.
Does that make sense?
And owning up to their own mistake, owning up to...
And they play the victim. They become the victim.
Yeah. Yes. So, okay, this is a good question. So you have there's something that we all need to, and this is something that we should all keep in mind. And this is like a human nature thing. This is something that's true of every person. Every person thinks that they're good. Every person thinks that they're intelligent. And every person thinks that they're in control of their life, or at least that they're undeceived, right? And that they have free will. And so this, because every person has this embedded in their self-perception, we have to be very careful in what we say to these people, or what we say to anybody. Because if you say something to someone that goes against any of those three self-beliefs, then you start closing doors to communication. Okay, so if you have someone who, because those three beliefs, if they're contradicted in any way, that's painful, and so there's going to be an instinctive reaction. They're going to argue. They're going to justify. They're going to go, well, what about this? Or in the extreme, they'll start saying things about you personally. So if they take things personally, that people will lash out, and this is all part of human nature. So in my experience, if you're trying to call attention to behavior, the best way to do that is to first listen to how they feel and address and validate feelings first, and say, I recognize and I feel and I think that I understand how you feel. It sounds like you feel this way, and it sounds like you're coming from this place, and then communicate there and say, okay, well, now that we've established that, and you've established that you are listening to them and care for them, then they might be prepared to listen to your advice. But in my experience, people don't listen to advice until they know that they're loved and cared for, at least enough to know that you're listening to them.
Yeah, like I was saying, lots of trauma responses these days because they're rooted in their childhood and some traumas. Yes. I want to invite everyone to design your future. Like, today is the first day of the rest of your life, and there's a lot of books and knowledge and an amazing Noah out there to help you with your communication, and this wonderful podcast, right, Tammy, to help you.
And stop playing the victim. I always say, and I mean, just because you went through something doesn't mean you have to play the victim always. And what do you say about that, Noah? I mean,
well, in my experience, I keep saying
we're all victims of something somewhere.
I keep saying my experience because I have this aversion to playing the authority, and so it's a lot of it is just humility. So I'm moderating the way I speak because of that. But if we, again, this goes back to human nature, and I have an obsessive compulsion to sort of zoom out and speak generally. But for human beings, something that every human being has in common is that we all suffer from something, and there's the range of suffering is broad and varied and individual, and it's all relative, because everyone thinks that their suffering is well, it's the thing that you can't deny. If you're suffering, you're suffering. And so whenever we suffer, we actually have two ways of dealing with it. We can either be a victim, or we can be responsible and take ownership of it and move forward anyway. And the way that we do that, and we're actually trained to do one of those two things by our parents. And so, and early childhood, our parents, our teachers, this is the culture that we're brought up in, will teach us to do one of those two things. And nowadays, more recently, especially in the last 5-10 years, there are many ideologies that elevate victimhood and award status because of victimhood. And it's...
Why do you think that is? Why do you think that's a badge of honor and just dwelling on being a victim?
Because you're allowed to be a victim as a child. And that's really the only time you're allowed. I mean, that's really what crying is. When you're upset and crying, that means you literally can't handle the world around you. And so that's why sadness and pain have all of these outward. It's very easy to tell outwardly if someone's feeling sad or if they're in pain. A lot of the other emotions are pretty easy. They're not as easy to notice. But when someone says, "Oh, I'm so sad," or whatever, it's to show the world that they can't deal, that they can't deal with what's happening around them, and it's essentially a call for help. That's why it's outward. So when we see a child or a baby that's crying, we have an instinctive urge to care for that child.
Right.
And so it's way easier if the problems in our life are taken care of by other people instead of us. And so that's really what a victim is someone who needs somebody's help. And so where these two things get conflated nowadays is that if I'm an adult, human beings are very smart and they know that victims get help. And so if I want my life to be easier and I want people to help me, it's easier to get that help if I can communicate and show the world that I'm a victim and I deserve help, because that's how we think about victims, is they deserve help.
That's what brings entitlement and also lack of ownership and responsibility, and then even control and manipulation, right?
Well, I don't think that people who are victims or who play that victim role think in terms of I think in terms of that, it's more about what can I get for free.
Right.
It's more about avoiding work and getting something for nothing, in my experience. Of course, I think that way because I'm a transactional attorney, and so I'm used to hearing these things. But I also have eight brothers and sisters, and I've seen. I've got 4 children. I know the games that human beings play, which is, if I want something, I can cry and get it.
That's what I mean with the controlling and manipulating.
Crying means I'm a victim.
Yeah.
And so as we age and mature and into the work world and start interacting with adults, the crying just takes on a different form.
Well, I was going to inject this here real quick. I was talking to a friend and she was bringing up at a study the other night. She's a teacher. And I've heard this from several teachers that are teaching, first, especially the first and second grade. Because usually it's always high school problems you hear. But the last few years, they've really noticed that, like, in first grade, kids are acting like they're 4 or 5 years old. They're behind. And what they found is so many parents are giving like phones and so much TV time and view time. Instead of dealing with the problem or playing with their kids, they're like putting them in front of a TV or handing them a phone to play with. And and the scientific studies are showing how it's damaging their brains.
Yeah.
And so they're not creative. They always have to have comfort immediately when they're in school. And so, like, out of 23 kids, she only has 3 kids that she has no problems with. The other kids are causing problems, interrupting. They can't even read in first grade yet. It's like one after another. Just throwing this back out to what you're saying.
It's a huge problem. My ex-wife's a teacher, English teacher, and so she was teaching children how to read for a while, and she faced the same problems, the same frustrations, and children and parenting. Children in school in public schools. Are being parented by teachers instead of their parents, and I know this because I know several teachers, and I have teachers in my family. So so not everyone. I mean, you don't have to be. As a child, you're allowed to be a victim, but as a parent, dealing with that victim. Your child is a victim. Let's say they're crying, they're crying, they're upset, they need something from me. And so it's sort of that provide for me because I'm in need. And that instinct is, what all parents have. And I think what that instinct is to make the pain go away, make whatever is making them cry go away. Sometimes that takes the form of, okay, here's a toy, here's some entertainment, or in the case of screens, here's a drug. But that is that's making them more of a victim. That's saying, okay, well, I have a pain or I'm suffering, So here's something outside of me. Let me give you something from the outside of your body that will help you, or that will make the pain go away. And so if victimhood is not trained out of your children, they will seek addiction.
Yeah. And it perpetuates the victimhood.
Right. And so that pain and suffering from whatever it is, and it could be any kind of pain and suffering, is if it's not dealt with appropriately, it stays. And when you have chronic pain, whatever you use to manage that pain, technically speaking, is addiction.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
To those same feelings, to those same ideas, right? Addiction
Right.
to that.
That's why because
quick
it's
fix.
so easy. Right. And so by giving our children screens, it's giving them a drug, which is why they're all addicted to it.
Yeah.
Right.
With whatever pain they're experiencing, I can make that pain go away by doing this.
Yeah. And it's not my problem. Like I'm going to evade. I don't want to deal with it. I don't have the skills to help this child overcome that. I want to ask you, Noah, and time goes by so fast when we're having
I want
fun.
to ask about his martial arts and stuff here. So
yeah, but before that, I just want to, like, for us, before we move on to the next thing, what of these principles have been something that you repeat, that are recurring, that help you with your 4 daughters? Like, do you have full custody? You're a full-time dad, single dad?
I share custody with my.
Oh, okay. So then, what's been a good thing that helps you, and you're like, oh, each time I use this or implement this, it works. I need to remember this more often.
Are you talking about? Are you asking me specifically on how I raise my children?
Basically, mediating or using your professional skills as an attorney.
Like a quick, just real quick, so we can.
Okay. So
nothing long.
Often the most effective way that I'm a mediate between my children is I provide words for them. And so usually our children have, my daughters, they get big feelings, they get into disagreements between themselves and with their mother. And so what I will do is I will listen to them go back and forth, even though it's very uncomfortable, until I can sort of pinpoint where they're miscommunicating.
It's like an interpreter. You're an interpreter, or
yeah. And so if you're around the same people long enough, you're able to translate their feelings into words for them.
That's great.
Or at least I can. At least I learned how to do that. And so at some point, once I feel I've identified where they're talking past each other, I'll stop them, and I will say, "It sounds like you're saying this. Or is this what you're saying?"
Right.
Yes. Okay. Do you understand? That sounds like she's saying this. Do you understand? Is that correct? Is this what you're trying to say? Yes. Okay. When I do that, I'm trying to provide language for them that overlaps so that they can connect.
It's wonderful.
That's generally what works for me, but that's for me and my children. I don't know if I can give that as advice to people.
Yeah.
Actually, that's kind of what I used to do with our girls. So I totally get it.
Yes, the feelings get in the way, and another important technique about this is to, again, emotions get in the way of words. Emotions get in the way of anything happening in the front thinky part of the brain. And so the more emotional you are, the less rational you are, technically speaking. So a lot of what goes into mediating and negotiating is to notice when emotions are rising, and then honoring and respecting those emotions and acknowledging them. And then if they get too high, we stop talking.
Need a timeout.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we stop talking so we can regulate. And this is so easy. All you got to do is breathe and hug each other. Hugging each other is not easy, but breathing is.
Yeah.
Okay, take our body out of that fight or flight, because those emotions will clench our body up, and we start activating those neurotransmitters, and I want to say something immediate. Oh, but you said this, and we get into that back and forth tit for tat, and then that elevates both people. So the way to stop that is Stop talking. Make your first word be a breath every time.
Amazing.
So Noah, that kind of leads me into the next question, because my grandson had taken martial arts before Taekwondo.
Oh, nice.
So what type? So does the breathing exercises and stuff come from some of your martial arts studies?
It becomes by yes. Whatever martial art. First off, martial arts is great for kids. It does a lot of things. It's a form of play, but it's also exercise. But it also helps you become more aware of your body. And so the martial art I practice, I've been doing Brazilian jiu-jitsu for 10 years. I was actually an instructor for beginners classes. And the only way to learn this martial art is to actually do it. And so what I mean by that is, I don't know if you guys know what jiu-jitsu is. It's a grappling martial art. You basically grab each other and try to squeeze each other to death. And bend your arms and legs the wrong way in really sophisticated ways. So, but if you go into an academy and you show up on your first day of jiu-jitsu, or it could be wrestling or judo or sambo, it doesn't really matter. And you start doing this thing and you start learning, your body does not know that you're not in a fight. And so because it's a new environment, your body will go into fight or flight. And the only way to be able to control that fight or flight and to prevent it from happening is to approach it and to keep doing it over and over again over time. So eventually, if I get into a situation where I'm in a physical altercation, I'm actually able to remain calm in my body because I've done it a lot. So the consistency and a consistent, disciplined approach to doing something difficult that your body is sort of afraid of. And so going and whether it's punching or kicking each other or wrestling around on the floor, it's kind of scary at first. But that's true for any new thing that you do. And so martial arts is one of those things where if you're in a fight, things could actually happen to you that are bad. And so your body is actually doing what it's supposed to by trying to protect you, by getting, it's by going catabolic. It starts to, you get adrenaline, you get cortisol, you get all of the stuff that your body needs to survive. And so what martial arts does is it trains your body out of those responses to these situations. That gives you more control. So when there is a high stakes situation, whether, you see a drunk, crazy person on the street, which actually happens to me and my ex-wife, and we were in Europe, and there was a guy that was just yelling at everyone that walked by. I was able to remain calm, and because of my martial arts training, I was able to make eye contact with him, breathe, and just watch him and remain calm. And that was all I needed to remain to avoid and disarm the situation and de-escalate it, was to remain calm and to be in control. That is the value of martial arts, and it's invaluable for children, because children in our schools are taught to just listen to their emotions and use their emotions to justify everything. All kinds of bad behavior. It's okay if you feel this way, then you are that way. But our bodies if they're not aligned with our minds, then we have an internal strife, an internal war, and that leads to bad things.
Right. Well, one of the things I know that my grandson got, because he did it for 10 years, the Taekwondo was registered as a lethal weapon, which is funny because
Cool.
he's so calm.
Yeah, Taekwondo, you can learn how to kick people really hard.
But it was the respect for, if they didn't respect their family or their parents, he couldn't pass his next belt. They learned how they had to open door. It was all about respect. Mm-hmm. And he has the kindest heart. And it was like, oh my gosh, when I listened to the instructor, because I went to a lot of his classes and stuff, I was like, they should be teaching this in schools. Yeah. Because it is so valuable. And people don't realize that the arts are so valuable, whether it's in Taekwondos, whether it's singing, where there's visual arts. There's so many different types that you can learn so many things from. And so it's always really sad to me when I see the arts of any form being taken out of schools.
Yeah. Well, I agree with you. I think that most schools should be art, in my opinion, and the martial arts should be included in that. I think it's excellent for children. And kids love it. Kids love it. It's so fun for them, and it is so good for their character, for their discipline. Your son's learned respect. That's a huge one. And so often these traditional martial arts academies they will have a fraternity structure to them, where where it's hierarchical, it's ordered, there are rules, and there's a man in charge, and he's there to enforce those rules and to engender these values like respect and discipline. These true fraternities are valuable. They're there to teach our children. It doesn't matter if they're, and women participate in these things too.
Oh, yes.
It doesn't have to be, but that culture, it's a very masculine energy, which there's not enough of in our culture. And it will save your children. Martial arts helped save my life. I know several people that say the same thing. Drug addicts, violent criminals that will raise their right hand and swear that martial arts saved their life.
That's wonderful. Wonderful. Noah, this has been an amazing conversation. I really appreciate you taking your time to join us. That interview that happened preliminary that you didn't realize was happening. I'm so glad it happened because you ended up here, and this is awesome.
I know, but we're going to have Noah back because we didn't finish the story.
Yeah.
And I didn't even get into my past. I didn't even get into my story. We didn't talk about my writing at all.
Yeah.
I know. So what are you writing? Let's go there real quick. What kind of led, if you can do your story and writing in 5 minutes here?
I'm writing a story. It's a memoir, but it's a memoir couched in religious science fiction. And so I have a very rough childhood. Lots of abuse and trauma and addiction in my family. And and so my purpose right now, my calling in life right now, is to, first off, care for my children. Second is to write my book and write my story. And this is something that this book has been in my head for probably 20 years now. And because of addiction, I hadn't been able to write it until a couple of years ago, to where I was able to get rid of it. And so that addiction I was using was to treat and to manage the pain that I was experiencing, not just from my childhood, but from me not writing. And so when I started to write my story, I wasn't able to actually start writing my story until I gave up my worst addiction. I still have a couple, but I gave up my worst one. And then I started to change. And this is when so part of what I'm writing about is that I don't think that there is much difference at all between religion and art. I think they both come from the same place. And so there's, I've been reading, I don't know if you're familiar with Julia Cameron or Rick Rubin, Stephen Pressfield. All of these men have written books about the creative process and art. And I see religion in all three of them.
Yeah, I'm reading a book. I can't remember what her name is. I think it's the one you just mentioned by her.
Artist's Way.
So yeah, but
Yes.
but God's the greatest creator.
He's the only one,
right?
We're tiny little creators, and so our job is, and so because our Father is a creator, we are creators because we're His children. And so that's essentially what I'm writing about. I'm writing about what creation is and how we can participate in it. And so my book is called The Story of Creation.
Oh, wow. It reminds me of The Artist's Way. When I have read those pages, it just helps me understand how this is so godly, to want to create, to have those talents and to develop them.
She actually says it's God. And
Yes.
she,
Yes.
she's like, first off, all creative energy comes from God. You're just blocked if you can't channel it. And so that's
Exactly.
when, right. I think she's the one that actually coined the term writer's block, right?
I think
Well,
so, probably. Yeah.
what's funny is Jesus was a carpenter.
Yeah.
And it
Yes.
takes a creative
Yes.
person to be a carpenter. And I think that's what people forget. Everybody's always so worried about college degrees, and they put artists like, oh, that you can't be an artist, you know? I mean, I was
Carpenter's a
told it
story.
for many years, but as you see behind me, I've always created
Did you
stuff.
paint that? Really?
Oh yeah, it's 3D art. It's hand
Oh,
sculpted and
wow.
carved.
Beautiful.
That's what I do is art,
I didn't know that.
professionally for
Look at
clients.
you. That's so
So
cool.
because God will usually give me a vision of what he wants me to create for them.
There you
So,
go. There you go.
I have to listen to their stories
Mhm.
and see their ideas and what they want. And
Yeah.
then I pray about it and God gives me a vision.
That is
So,
so cool. You should check out. So if you like that Julia Cameron book, Rick Rubin, The Creative Act, and The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield.
Awesome.
awesome.
It's so interesting because they all three describe the same framework.
Mm.
They just use different words. Stephen Pressfield says that all creative energy comes from the muse, and
Yeah.
that you have to live a disciplined, hardworking life in order to please the muse, and then she gives you the energy so that you can actually do your creative art. And Rick Rubin is the same way. Except his is a little bit more. His book isn't. It's more written like a religious text, but he calls it the source. He's like, all creative energy comes from the source, and your job as the artist is to simply open yourself up to it.
Yeah. Be the vessels. Mm-hmm.
Yes. And the way we do that is to connect to the divine. And so essentially what all three of these books are teaching people is how to repent.
Mm.
Julia Cameron says, here's how you repent. You wake up every morning and you write. And
Morning paper. Yeah.
Writing is embodied thinking.
Yeah.
Okay. And so by writing, we go inward, right? And so the source of all creative energy is within us, because in my personal view, that's God's connection to us. He's connected through the Holy Ghost, the Holy Spirit, and the Holy Spirit will show you art, just like what Tammy said. You actually get an image.
Yes.
Are you actually shown an image?
If I don't see the image, then I know it's
so
not my
cool.
customer.
That's so cool. So you created this based on what was shown to you?
Yeah, because I listen to their stories, and it's like I'm very visual. So anything that you say, I see it in my mind.
Cool.
So I always, when I meet with a client, I find out if it's for a business or their home, what their decor is, what their taste is, and then I have them tell me stories of what they like.
Interesting.
Their favorite places to hike or to go to. And I create from there. And God gives me a vision because I pray about it first before I draw. And then he gives me a couple sketches. And even though I always draw a couple just to make the person feel good, but I actually know ahead of time which one they're going to choose.
Okay, so you pick a few and then they pick one and you know which one they're going to pick?
Yeah.
Cool. That's so cool.
And they're similar, so it doesn't matter to me which one, but
Yeah.
I don't know. And then like
So your
I've done
process of
different.
interacting with them and listening to them, is that your process?
Yes, you have to listen to them because to what they like and what stories.
Mm-hmm.
So every piece that I create for a commission piece is telling part of their story, a favorite place or favorite
I have
moment,
to hire you after
or
I tell you my story.
Something what they want. Does that make sense? And so I do have some of my own pieces like behind me, and it was created from different scenes from different places that we've gone. So, or like if I've created a flat, there's reasons. And sometimes it's like God will say, I want you to create this, and then I'll sell it later because it means something to somebody else down the road.
Amazing. And don't worry if you cannot see things in your mind. That's called aphantasia or aphantastic people. You can still be creative. But Tammy
is
has that
creative.
gift.
And that's what I noticed, like what Noah was saying. Thank you for reminding me, Lori, was it doesn't matter. Whenever I've gone into classrooms and taught, or people will say, oh, I'm not creative. But I love finding the creative piece in you. And it's like Lori tries to tell me she's not creative, and Lori is very creative. And she gives me lots of creative ideas by just her little things that she does.
Yeah.
So, but there's.
I totally agree with you, because I've met so many people that have said the same thing. I'm not creative. I just like to wear clothes, and I go to the thrift stores and I pick clothes and I sew clothes. I'm like, that's art. Like, how is that not art? And
or
so many
cooking,
people have this idea that art is just in a museum that you go look at.
Yeah.
So totally agree with you. But we've got to go now. So
we love having you, Noah. Thanks for the value you added to this group. And I want to invite you to check all the comments and interactions and questions that our viewers have submitted. And then for all our viewers to tap into problem solving and being mediators and peacemakers like Noah does professionally and in his household with his children, and also master the martial art, and then writing his book now. So what a great example you are as a doer, as someone that's heeding to your call of being creative and implementing all of those pieces and just trying to deliver and live with intention and purpose, because God or divine is telling you, you got to do this. So
I want to say,
I was just going to say, Noah, that was so kind of you to say thank you.
You're welcome.
Would you like to say, Noah, anything to our guests before we leave?
Yes. Art is religion. Religion is art. Both of these are connections, and anything that connects us is love.
Amazing. Beautiful. Thank you so much.
So I want to say thank you again for being here. Be sure if you have any questions, put them out here. So, or direct message Lori or I. We appreciate you being here. Be sure to share and like, and share with your family and friends. So thanks again. And hope you have a wonderful week.
This was such a fun conversation. Thank you so much.
See you next time, you guys. Noah, you can stay with us while we say goodbye to people out there, and stay with us, Noah. Hang out.
All right. Bye, everyone.